Welcome to iNN's Headlines and Beyond for March 27th, 2012. Tonight we have a full lineup for you. Uh, we are going to, before we're going to split the show into two half-hour formats, and the first hour is going to be dedicated to U.S. domestic affairs, and then the second half we will take a look at U.S. foreign affairs. Beginning in the United States with U.S. domestic affairs, the primary season is rolling on slowly but surely, tracking through the states, and a large chunk of the primaries now have really been taken to the sidelines. The candidates really aren't saying much, even though there are opportunities to say things. Not much. It's just they're just not saying that much, and the opportunities that they're given to say something, they're kind of fumbling the ball a little bit. So we'll push them off to the side and look at the main issues in the U.S. domestic affairs. And the two main issues in the headlines are Trayvon Martin and Obamacare. We've had another night of rallies and political speeches and so on and so forth, and we are getting more and more into the political backbone of the whole situation here. Is that and this is where the tragedy is that the whole Trayvon Martin case is no longer about Trayvon Martin anymore. It's about the politics of Trayvon Martin. And you have all the politicians who can use Trayvon Martin showing up and turning Trayvon Martin into a political cause. And it's about gun control. It's about, again, this whole cry of black racism, oppression against black people in the United States. And this is what I said before, that they really need the tone, the calls about oppression in for black people in the United States really needs to stop. They're actually doing a disservice to the people there, because, as I said before, it's no longer. Let me sort of explain myself here. It's no longer a black and white world. With global economics, you have people of all colors, all races coming into the United States. You have all people immigrating to various different places, and you no longer have this typically white community. Particularly if you live in places like Toronto, as I do. I live in Toronto, and we're heavily influenced by the United States. I'm an American-born citizen, but I'm born into an immigrant family. And when I moved here to Toronto with my family, we moved into a predominantly immigrant community, particularly Greek immigrant community. And for those of you who are not aware, there are two types of Greeks. There's the Euro Greeks, who are primarily European Greeks, and then there are the non-European Greeks. The non-European Greeks are primarily from the eastern side of Greece. They stretch into the Middle East, into Turkey, into Africa, and all the way up into India. Or not up into, but all the way across to India. And they're basically they're a darker form of Greeks, and it's actually in the last name. If you see someone named anyone who has the last name Mavro or Kata, they're not the European Greeks. They're more of the south. They're more of the south Eastern Greeks, and their culture is more of an Eastern culture than the Western Greeks, who have more of a traditional Western culture. But even there, that's not always true. It depends on the villages that you go into, and most of the what they call the Eurocentric Greeks, the Euro culture in Greece, can primarily be seen in the cities. when you go into the villages, uh, you're stepping back in time, and what you see is a lot of non-European things. It's primarily Eastern. The behaviors and everything would be categorized as not European. If you go back into European history, you look at the music, you look at a lot of the festivals, the dresses, and everything like that. Um, you could say these people are not European. That these would be more Eastern traditions. They're more Eastern behaving in terms of how they view things. And the Asians are very similar. I find that the Asians that are coming into Toronto are almost exactly the same way the Greeks are. And the views here are starkly different. And I know this when I talk to other immigrants in the United States. The immigrant behavior, the immigrant understanding of things is really on an independent level. They're not going to simply sit back and say, oh, well, I'm being discriminated against, I don't have any money, this is the government's fault, and I'm being oppressed. Most Greeks, most immigrants, when they come over, they come up with nothing. Their first instinct, their first actions are to go, if you can't find a job, build your own business and start your own, and give yourself a job. And that's how a lot of these people start off. And they literally take jobs that most North Americans, most Europeans, these are the white people here, won't take. And I see this. I see this with the people and how they interact with other people, and particularly in the immigrant community. The immigrant communities are doing jobs that most white people won't work in, and I see how. And you go into and they have this here. They have these Asian grocery stores. They have these immigrant grocery stores. You go into an immigrant grocery store and see how they work and behave in there, and then you go into European Canadian, a sort of a white grocery store, and the people at the cash register, they don't want to work, they don't want to be there. They're ho hum, they're slow, occasionally you get a smile out of it, but nothing. They're not, nothing in terms of comparison to immigrant workers. And I think I talked to other business owners who are around me, and most of them are, again, some type of immigrant. But even the ones who are more European won't hire North Americans because they hear that North Americans just simply, white people simply don't work. You can hire an immigrant, and an immigrant will work their butt off for you. But a European or a white person, they're living for the weekend. They can't wait to have time off. As soon as they get in, the first thing they're thinking about is getting time off. So what happens is that you can no longer, it's no longer a black-white issue in terms of what's going on in race now. This whole issue of black-white, that has to go. It has to be taken out because while you're having immigrants, including and here's what I'm saying, it's not a black-white issue anymore. We have immigrants from Africa coming in, who, in the short years they've been here, have gone from working menial jobs to owning their own businesses. I mean, they're doing very well. A lot of the African immigrants are doing very well as compared to their black counterparts who are native to North America. And so what happens is that, this is what I pointed out, it's not a racial issue if you have Africans coming over, the immigrants coming over, starting off with nothing, and then growing these large businesses and becoming something. There's no reason why a black person in the United States, or anyone in the United States who is in this poverty situation, and it is primarily black people, couldn't do this. But you have to get rid of the idea, the attitude that you're always being oppressed and people are pushing you down. If you can't get rid of this, if you can't change the mindset that pushes a lot of black people into crimes, that we see a lot of black people, a lot of particularly black men, in jail. The black on black homicides is the highest of any category. And this was pointed out today on Erin Burnett. And I think if you're watching CNN and you're watching in terms of the bias on CNN, you'll find Erin Burnett not as biased. I mean, she does a very good job of being balanced in her reporting, as compared to Anderson Cooper, who's just right after her. Anderson Cooper, compared to Erin Burnett, is an absolute mess and nightmare in terms of bias. But Erin Burnett, this is what she did today, is allowed two guests who were discussing the Trayvon Martin case she should literally step back and let them discuss things back and forth. I mean, this is if you're there as a journalist and a news person, there to facilitate discussion, and you get this discussion going between two of the guests that you have on site, and you get this good discussion coming out. Why stop it? Why insert yourself in the middle of this? And this is what Erin Burnett has been able to do. She sort of has the president of the mind, and she did this today, to step back and allow Roland Martin, who was on the left, even though he now protesting, he says he's not a liberal Christian. He sort of protested this. Nonetheless, you have Roland Martin on the left, because he's always supporting left issues. And you had Reverend C.L. Bryant, the former president of the NAACP, as the opposing side. And apparently, I didn't really realize this, that he's a Republican. And what he was saying, and this is his argument, and it basically is my argument, that he's upset at the black community, and these are primarily the Democrats now, for politicizing something that shouldn't have been politicized. The whole Trayvon Martin case, Trayvon Martin shouldn't have been politicized, but it's sort of spun out of control, and that's all it's about now. Trayvon Martin in this case now no longer matters. It's the politics that matter. And you have tons of different political groups going up there. I mean, Roland Martin is right. Yeah, there are millions of people there, and it's going all across the nation. But it has nothing to do with Roland Martin. It has nothing to do with Trayvon Martin. If you listen to them speak, it's not about Trayvon Martin. It's about the politics, and it's about this politics of playing the victim. And it's the exact same. Is the thing that is not needed in order to move black society forward. This whole, as I said, this whole mindset of, I'm the victim and I can't do anything. The government needs to do things for me. And this is the argument of the left here. This is the whole argument of the left, that government needs to step in and really do things for people because people can't do it for themselves. And Roland Martin continuously argues on this perspective. I mean, he's been doing this since he started stumping for Obama, supporting the left, the socialist side of things. So now he's saying, I'm not a liberal Christian. But wait a minute here. What have you been doing all this time? Where have your arguments been all this time? It's been on the Democratic left. I mean, it's very easy by the way he's been behaving the last few years to call him a social democrat. And socialist Democrats are atheists. So he may call himself a Christian, and he may say he's not a liberal Christian, but his actions the last few years, since the election during the election of Obama, and since then, has been nothing but, the liberal left, the social left, which ironically stands against Christianity. And has really, all they've been doing, the social left, and all through all these years, and Obama plays the same card here, is the whole black victimization thing here. And they need to get away from it. It doesn't do the black community any good to sit there and say, I'm such a victim. You need to get up for yourself and start moving things forward for yourself. Don't wait for the government to sit there, come to your rescue. Stand up yourself. And there are a lot of avenues you can do this with. But if the agencies around you, the community agencies around you, are always telling you victim, 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 and you start believing that you are a victim, you start behaving like the victim, then you never move forward. And this was the argument of C.L. Bryant, from the ex president or say former president of the NAACP, and he's been in the more the less politically sensitive cases, working on things, and saying that calling these people who are politicizing the issue out and saying, you can't be doing this. This is harming the community more than it's helping it. And Roland Martin, who apparently is a reverend, simply does the the Democrat thing. He obnoxiously dismisses it. And the thing is, when someone obnoxiously, and this is the way Anderson behaved, when someone obnoxiously dismisses an argument, there is no more argument after that, because the person is now behaving ignorantly. Ignorance and ignorant does not mean the person doesn't know something. Ignorance, by definition, is the thing that you don't want to know. I mean, it means you can see it, you can understand it if you want to, but you choose not to. So ignorance is the rejection of knowledge. It's not the lack of knowledge, it's the rejection of knowledge. And this is why a lot of the social left, including Roland Martin and including Anderson Cooper, are ignorant. Because they sit there and they start rejecting knowledge simply because it doesn't agree with their philosophy. Well, if something doesn't agree with your philosophy and you start being ignorant to it, if you simply ignore this knowledge that opposes your views, you're not free thinking. You're not open analysis. You're not being open-minded. You're being closed-minded. But again, they'll say, "Oh no, we're not. We're intellectual people." Well, look at what you're doing. If you are standing again, and this is the case here, look at any of the immigrants. Look at how they come in with nothing, and look at where they are now. There is no reason why a black person couldn't have done the same thing. And this was even highlighted in way back in the 90s. They give me an example of how old this is, and how far beyond reality a large chunk of this whole Trayvon Martin political thing is this issue was raised in the Bundys. If you look at Married with Children, this whole issue of immigrants coming over with nothing and the lazy Americans sort of standing still and not doing anything, and the immigrants who come with nothing ended up owning the store. This is what happened to Al Bundy. He wound up training these immigrants. These immigrants saved their money and were really ambitious and worked hard, and they ended up buying out a lot of those shoe stores. So they went from having nothing to owning the shoe store, while Al Bundy stayed working for the shoe store. So he stayed working for minimum wage, and this says an enormous amount. This says an enormous amount about what's going on today in the United States. And this says an enormous amount about Obamacare, which is in the Supreme Court. Again, it's this whole attitude that the government has to come in and take care of you. It's this whole concept of Big Brother that was in 1984. About the overreaching behaviors and the need, and it's an obsessive, neurotic need of the social left to come in and control every aspect, to micromanage every aspect of a person's life, including down to, this was sort of a joke made by sort of a hitting argument made by one of the justices, that is the government now going to come in and regulate that people should be having broccoli for dinner because it affects the health, it affects the health insurance, and because it affects people's health. And the thing is, they've already done this. It's not that if they're going to do this, they've already done this. Look at the trans fat laws in terms of what you can and can't have inside the food anymore. How many cities have pushed these trans fat? Look at the change in the FDA rules in terms of, there's a lot of this pseudo junk science in there pushing what people believe is healthy and not healthy. And it's not just simply that they're letting people choose what they want. They're forcing them. It's being mandated by law. And the thing is, I said this last night about Obamacare. Obama has an entire room filled with billionaires, of which the smallest billionaire is Oprah. Imagine Oprah in a room full of billionaires, and she is the one with the least amount of money. And he comes up and says, we cannot figure out how to finance free healthcare for the rest of the United States. That it has to come from higher taxes, that people have to participate. Well, if you can have all these people, all these billionaires in the same room with all this amount of money, and he doesn't know where to get the money from to pay for all this stuff, and none of these rich billionaires who are so concerned with humanitarianism, who are so socially left, won't step forward and say, here's my money. The problem with Obamacare, and it is Obamacare, it is his baby, is that the people on the left simply don't care to bring it in. This is about politics. This is about control. This is about socialism coming in and really taking a stranglehold on the United States. We've heard Michael Moore say this before, that the United States, the ideals of the United States, is a 200-year-old mistake. And when you see him on the air talking, he's not talking about the original American independence, individual rights, individual freedoms. He's talking about socialism. And yet this fat ass, Michael Moore, who talks about everyone getting a fair slice of pizza, who has millions of dollars in the bank from his movies, from his popularity, and so on and so forth, when has he gone out with his own money, with his own slice of pie, his pizza pie, and given everybody he knows who has worked on his film an equal share of his money? And the answer is never. This fat ass ate the entire pie himself. And most of these pigs and these piglets who are squealing about government funds and government need to coming to the aid of people are all these people, are all these piglets, these pigs, and this is an Orwellian reference here. You need to be reading George Orwell's works. They're not going to stop because they are so addicted to their own sense of power, to their own sense of self, their own egos, and their own sense of self-power, that they're not going to give it up willingly. So we're going to end this now here, because we now have to go, we're getting on to the time where we have to go on to the second part. So I will be back in about 2 to 3 minutes for the second half.